Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gear Priority Podcast. My name is Justin, and I'm the host of the show. Today, we are talking about waterproof, breathable fabrics. Bear with me, that's going to probably be an issue all episode. But we're particularly going to be looking at how they're used in outerwear, like jackets, and diving deep into what breathable means, what it even means. And I'm joined by Alex Lauver with Outdoor Research. Alex is the Senior Director of Materials, Innovation, and Sustainability at Outdoor Research. Welcome, Alex. How's it going? Love the setup there. I see you got some probably waterproof, breathable fabrics around you right now.
I sure do, Justin. Thanks. Appreciate the invite to come on today.
No problem. And so I'm always doing some digging into my guests before the episodes, and I saw another. I don't know if it was a podcast or something else where you're talking about you don't really have a job description, but For the people out there, are you able to kind of just give us kind of a little bit of the lowdown on what it is you do with Outdoor Research?
Yeah, sure. So I started with the brand about 7 years ago next month as outerwear product manager. And as the brand continued to evolve, there was the need for somebody to kind of get above all the categories and dive in on materials innovation. And I really kickstarted the sustainability efforts. It's a team effort these days. I'm not taking credit for it, but really kind of started that journey for us. So my role today really oversees all three of those functional areas. So I'm leading our materials team. So that's the people that pick out all the fabrics and textiles we use. We do new technologies within those fabrics. Innovation is kind of a all-encompassing word to some extent. I like to think of myself more as the quarterback of a group of all-stars and a group of subject matter experts, flexing and pulling people in on different kinds of interesting ideas. And that could be in raw materials. It could be in design. It could sometimes be process innovation, which is kind of not the fun, pretty part of innovation sometimes, but is really necessary to propel a business forward. And then sustainability, which is everything coming to us these days in terms of trying to make sure that we're ahead of that, reducing our impact on the planet. You know, we like to say people, planet, and product.
Nice. Yeah, so you kind of are a little bit of a jack of all trades at Outdoor Research. So yeah.
Somewhat. Yeah. I mean, it's what I love about my job at OR and why I sometimes say I don't have a job description. I can come in the morning and I have a to-do list and I have a list of meetings and I kind of know what's on tap. And sometimes it just goes sideways in the first hour. No days here are the same for me. And actually I thrive in that. So one of the things I love about my job is that I kind of blink and I look at my watch. I'm like, oh my God, it's 4:00. I got to go, or I got to get ready to go home. So it keeps me moving and it's a never ending sort of journey, which is the fun part.
That's awesome. And I imagine it's there's never a dull moment. I think
never.
Outdoor Research has a huge number of products. I think especially probably for this, like if you did like a number of SKUs per number of employees, it's probably a fairly high number up.
Yeah, it was funny. We had a meeting recently. We're like, our product line's getting a little big. Maybe we should look at that. You're right. And I think that's a testament to our passion for getting people outside and making sure that they have what they need to enjoy themselves, in sort of a distillation down of what do we think our mission statement is these days.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I get asked a lot of the time why I don't necessarily like have dedicated reviews on my YouTube channel about like clothing and outerwear. And I think it's because it's such an individualistic thing. So having a large number of products really makes it so that there's going to be something for everyone with what they like and what they need when they're out there. But
yeah, completely. I mean, we love to say that all the time. People's gear closets these days are not as specialized as they once were. That's not my jacket for skiing and my jacket for hiking and my jacket for whatever. Now it's, I want to buy one jacket and I want to wear it on my commute, wear it when I'm on vacation, and wear it in all the activities I do. Maybe there's a level where you have one or two, but it's not so micro segmented these days.
Yeah, definitely. So we're gonna hop into waterproof, breathable fabrics, and I think I get a little bit tongue in cheek about that term, but we'll get into that. Before we do, we always do some rapid fire questions. Some of them pretty random. I pick them out of my weird brain, and we're gonna throw them at you, and just to get to know you a little bit better. So the first one, what are your favorite 2 outdoor activities?
Oh man. Well, I picked up road biking actually during the pandemic. I live on a peninsula here in Seattle and the bridge broke. So the only way for me to get to work during the pandemic was either ride a bus, and like nobody wanted to do that during the pandemic, or ride a bike. So I picked up road biking. So I've become pretty passionate about that. The other one, and I'll go with the more recent, is we taught my almost 7-year-old how to ski the last 2 winters. So this is the year I have skied more days that I think I have since like college. So for me right now, it would definitely be downhill skiing and road biking here in Seattle.
That's awesome. Did you guys in Seattle? It's like the fourth person. We're over half of the people on the podcast so far from Seattle, so that's
We're
pretty
an
cool.
outdoorsy town.
Yeah, exactly. Did you guys get the snow in that area that the rest of kind of the Pacific Northwest and even just West in general got?
Yeah, we didn't get the craziness that happened there in the Rockies for a while, and what's going on in California is, I mean, otherworldly in some senses. So we didn't get quite that level of epic. But our season started this year about a month early. So we started skiing in December here, and then my family and I drove to Colorado for Christmas and skied there. And we got back here in that January timeframe. We normally start. We already had 2 or 3 days behind us. So it was a good winter for snow in Seattle. I don't think it was some of the epic conditions other places have seen, but it's feast or famine in Seattle. It's either ice or we actually get some snow.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, California and Utah got they. I was pretty jealous. All right, second question. What's your favorite? And this one may be tough. What's your favorite product at Outdoor Research?
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, that's a good question.
This one's one of my favorite. I've asked it to a couple people, and it's especially when you have a very large portfolio, and for you, you're in a position where you probably get to see and touch a lot of these different products. It can be a tough one.
I do, and I get a great opportunity to try gear. At obviously, like I get a lot of gear for free. I use a lot of samples. I test a lot of things. The answer I want to give you, I can't, because it's a product that is not public yet, that we're still working on. So I can't give you that answer, but it actually is a new waterproof breathable piece coming in, I think, fall 24. So it's still fairly far out there yet. I'm in 25 already in terms of product ideation and material. So I can't talk about that one yet, but it's really exciting. So I can't wait for folks to see it when it comes out. I think the sort of silly answer right now that I'm pretty pumped about is our Zendo collection. You know, it's a pair of stretch woven bottoms. I have the shorts that I've just destroyed over the last 2 years. Just yesterday, I ordered a pair of the new pants that came out this spring that I have not even worn yet. I tried them on this morning before I came to work. And for whatever dorky reason, I just live in those things. And I'm kind of stoked to go camp and wear them here in a few weeks. So as silly as that answer might be, it's our Zendo collection.
Nice. That's good to know. I just actually have an order coming in that I put in yesterday. That's going to probably be arriving tomorrow or the next day for the Zendo shorts. So looking forward to trying those out. Yeah, they look great.
They're super comfortable. I wear them everywhere. I take them when I travel overseas as my like hotel short, and I've camped in them a billion times. I think I've swam in rivers in them. I mean, they're awesome.
That's what I'm going to be using them for. They're going to be heading to Southeast Asia for a month, and they're going to be one of the pairs of shorts I'm bringing out there because they seem.
Where are you going?
Thailand, and then Philippines.
Nice. That's awesome.
It'll be it's gonna be my fiance and our honeymoon next December.
Nice. Congratulations. Thailand is a cool place. Vietnam and Thailand are two of my favorite spots.
Nice. Yeah, I'm stoked. Neither of us have been to Thailand, but we're excited for the food and everything. Yeah,
it's awesome. Food is so good.
Thank you. All right, third question. I feel like we could talk about travel probably. I think travel is one of your passions. I think I saw it somewhere as I was doing my my searching. So.
That's true.
Might have to get you back for a gear for travel podcast at some point.
Yeah, or you know what would be a fun one too is like talking to industry folks, not about product, but about their travel stories, because it's a fun topic when you meet other product people and sourcing people. Of everybody's got stories from their travels over the years.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good outtake.
Yeah. Have you ever broken a bone?
Yes, many, several. Yeah, several. I've broken a lot of bones over the years. The biggest, most dangerous one was my wrist when I was a kid playing baseball. I was climbing a fence, and my cleat got stuck on the top of the fence, and I don't even remember why I was climbing. I didn't want to walk all the way around the whole thing, and I fell over and just landed just perfectly with my wrist turn. I snapped my radius right in half when I was like 9. I've broken ribs. I've broken my nose. I've toes and fingers a couple times. It's broken bones are they're one of the things you learn from for sure. Like, yeah, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a good lesson. But better than a busted joint though. So
yes, I've never done that. Nothing that serious of repair.
Fingers crossed. You keep that going. Kind of another product question, but this is for other company. What's a product you've seen from another company in the last year that you thought was really innovative?
Yeah. Wow, that's another really good question. I'm trying to think of things I've purchased over the last handful of years. Cool. I'll go with this. I don't know if this is the most innovative, but it made me happy and delighted and surprised. I ride a Specialized Diverge Elite gravel bike here in Seattle. It's my bike commute bike, and I'm super in love with it. I'm like weirdly emotionally attached to my bike, which I found out later is like really normal. I just put a new saddle on it, and I use Bontrager lights. I have a Bontrager light system with a headlight. You know, here in Seattle, it gets dark at 3:30 in the winter, and a tail light with a remote, so I can toggle the headlight to all these different modes, kind of hands-free. I just upgraded to a new saddle, and that saddle came with a mount that my light actually just clicks right into my saddle, like completely seamlessly. And I was like, oh my God, why don't more bikes have this? Granted, they have to like be compatible and stuff, but I was just like, whole wall full of saddles at REI the other week. And I'm like, that one, because my light fits in perfectly.
Nice. Yeah, it's those little things. It's those little things that
it gets it higher too, which is nice. You know, you want that light where people can see it.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably key for biking.
For sure, especially in traffic.
Yeah, exactly. And final rapid fire question: how many liters of water a day do you usually drink?
Wow, a lot. I love drinking water. In fact, we were getting set up. I put my cup of water behind me.
What water break?
I drink a lot of water through the day. If I had to guess by liters, I'm going to say 6 to 8 liters a day. You know, bike commuters show up at the office, and I have a downhill commute in the way in, so I don't have to work quite as hard, but I get here and chug 2 glasses of water and drink some coffee, and it's like 9 a.m. So I drink a lot of water and love it. I was an athlete for many years in my younger years, so I mean, I kind of grew up drinking a fair amount of water instead of soda or juice or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, tons. It's always a problem when we go hiking. So I'm like, all right, where's my 7-liter bladder? And my wife's like, seriously, we're going for a day hike.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Hydration is important, and it blows my mind when some people are like one or 2 liters a day, and I'm like, that doesn't seem like enough. You're dehydrated.
I love my water.
Yeah, exactly. And all right, I think we could probably jump right into waterproof breathable fabrics. And since we're talking about waterproof breathable fabrics, I didn't send you this kind of question in advance, but can you provide just a little bit of background around OR's history with waterproof breathable fabrics? Because I know it kind of varies. I know you guys have some fabrics that are in-house. You use some out-of-house fabrics and membranes as well. So yeah, just some of that history.
Yeah, sure. We're based in Seattle, like you probably those listeners and viewers have picked up. So we're in a wet climate. So for us, waterproof breathable jackets are a way of life. I've lived on the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. On the East Coast, people pop open their umbrella when it rains, no big deal. And in Seattle, if you walk down the street on a rainy day in an umbrella, people are like, where are you from? We don't use those here, right? Everybody just has a jacket, and that's what they wear and keep one stashed in their bags. So we believe in waterproof breathable technologies here in Seattle because we use them literally every day. We're a Gore partner, Gore-Tex brand partner. So we have a Gore-Tex assortment of products. As you mentioned, we have other branded membranes. We're huge partners with Pertex, which is a branded material out of Japan and based in the EU and the UK. And we have a lot of our own house brands. Essential is our premier. We have Ventia, which is kind of the house brand for waterproof breathables. Our best-selling item in the entire product line is our 4A Aspire Gore-Tex Packlight jackets, which are here in the mannequins with me in the studio. And we sell railroad carts of these things, and they're a fantastic product. So we definitely believe in it, and it shows in our sales. It shows in our product assortments at our key retail partners. We've been doing business for 42 years, just over 40 years. I think the 40th anniversary is during the pandemic. Ouch, no party. And we've had waterproof breathable garments for a big chunk of those 42 years.
Nice. Yeah, I don't remember when exactly Gore, I think it was maybe 1960s where Gore came about. So yeah, I imagine you guys were probably incorporating them pretty early in the process. And I think for the people at home, what would be the difference between a jacket that's advertised as waterproof versus waterproof breathable?
Well, that's a tough one because so many different brands sort of have their own nomenclature, I guess I'll say, in general. And don't at me because I think I'm going to make some statements that are generalized on my experience. I know they've recognized that there are a big spectrum here. I think one of the things you should think through is sort of the fashion scale. If you go to a major fashion brand or you're looking for just sort of a casual jacket, They might just say that it's waterproof. And what that probably means is one of two things. It is breathable, but just not at a high enough performance level where it's something that people are seeking out, right? Like they're looking for a weatherproof jacket for their commute. You're probably not putting it in a position where a high level of breathability is really a marketing factor for that jacket. Or secondarily, it might not have some of the features that a jacket fully featured as a waterproof breathable shell might have. For example, seam taping, right? There's a fair amount of fabrics that have a little bit of a coating that have a great weather resistance for everyday life that don't get put into a position where you want to go so far as to seam tape the garment to make it fully weatherproof. Again, I feel like that line is kind of on the sort of fashion lifestyle sort of side. It could come down to the brand. Maybe the brand isn't a super technical brand and they're just not entirely marketing it the way they should or could, I guess. So I think of it in that sense. Most rainwear in the outdoor industry and outdoor adjacent, some of the athletic markets, they're pretty technical these days. They're pretty technical shells.
Yeah. And I do see that a lot. Just most things these days are using some sort of membrane that is breathable to a degree. I think there are some examples where I see products where it's just there's just like 100% zero breathability for them as well, and that's kind of comes with its own trade-offs. I know some brands they'll just try and use mechanical ventilation 100% in order to vent out jackets, whereas other brands they'll kind of lean on that waterproof breathable a little bit. And I think you kind of got into a little bit, and this is something that I don't know as a consumer, but maybe there's an answer from a manufacturer standpoint as far as like what does breathable mean? What makes I think there's a lot of different aspects of this, but like what makes a fabric or a jacket breathable, and what are the factors that play into that?
All right, we're diving into the deep end now.
Yeah, right away.
It's really complex. There's a lot of different factors that kind of go into that point. But what I will say at the highest level, waterproof and breathable are diametrically opposed features, right? We can make something super waterproof fairly easily, but it's not necessarily very breathable. Or we can make something that's pretty breathable, but we haven't figured out how to make that super durably waterproof yet. And I say that in general. Again, there's lots of different membranes and lots of different marketing campaigns out there. We know how to do both things. We haven't figured out the Venn diagram with that overlap yet, where we have something that performs really well. In most instances, the breathability portion comes down to two different factors. You already named one, which is mechanical. The easiest way to dump heat or moisture out of a system is to have a pit zip. Open that big zipper up, create a nice big hole. You can dump a lot of heat that way. Or you can do it through one of the laws of physics and principles of physics, where you start to diffuse things across the membrane. Ultimately, you're talking about a membrane, and you're thinking about trying to keep liquid water out, so droplets of water, rain, but you're trying to let gaseous moisture or water, so sweat vapor or water vapor, out. And remember that a gas particle of water is smaller than a droplet of water. So in some senses, if you think about this as like, spaghetti in a colander or grapes in a colander over your sink, you just got to make sure the holes are tuned to the right size. Sorta.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good analogy, good metaphor for that.
I'm big on analogies. You'll learn that real quick. So
sweet, nice. Yeah, because like you said, the water droplets are bigger than the water vapor particles, so that's why you can have those vapor particles kind of leaving the jacket, and that's what the membranes are acting as that colander or
sieve or whatever term you want to use on it. Yep.
Sieve, yeah. Okay, and so how do things like vapor pressure, and because I've a lot when I was doing research like years ago into like Gore-Tex products, a lot of the literature and stuff that I was reading had to do with vapor pressure and building up enough vapor pressure to kind of push the water vapor out of the jacket. But then recently we've started hearing more about like air permeability with jackets, and so how do those two things kind of play into the membranes?
Yeah, we're getting deep now. So there's a couple different types of membranes, and there's also different ways membranes work. And that would be like the 101, 201, that's the 301 level of this. And in some cases, I'll say publicly, my cell phone's in my pocket, it's open to a list of notes. This is a deep, complex thing. Like, we're talking about general knowledge. If we get into that level, I have some notes I'm probably going to reference because it is a complex thing. Ultimately, what you're relying on when you don't use a mechanical ventilation is one of the laws of thermodynamics, which is sort of like two systems want to become equal with one another, simplifying it down. So think of it this way. Inside your microclimate, inside your jacket, we call it a microclimate, you are hot and you're sweaty, right? There's moisture buildup happening inside. If you're in a location and here in the United States, think about like Colorado or the Rockies where it's cool and it's pretty dry. Your systems want to equalize. So that hot, moist air is going to want to escape to go towards the cool and dry air so that it kind of equalizes. That is the pressure differential that you're talking about right now. Now imagine you're in a place like Seattle where it's warm and moist on the inside of your microclimate, and it's probably less cold. It doesn't get as cold in Seattle as it does sometimes in Colorado and the Rockies, et cetera, especially at altitude. Our hill here is like 4,000 or 5,000 feet. I skied at like 13,000 feet, 11,000 feet when I was in Colorado. You end up with a much smaller pressure differential because it's so humid here and it's not quite so cold. That pressure differential means that some kinds of membranes, it moves more slowly. There's less pressure behind it. You get less breathability out of it. So in general, and now you get into like the different types of membranes, that's what you want to think through. User experience is nothing to do with that at this point. You're just talking about the laws of physics that move moisture through a membrane. Air permeability is essentially that membrane has a CFM flow, meaning that air goes back and forth through that membrane without any pressure differential at all. But once you put in a pressure differential, it's like you immediately speed up the amount of that moisture that moves through. You don't have to build up the heat and humidity behind the membrane to make it move. It just starts to escape immediately. So the comfort level, we like to use the C word here, comfort, instead of breathability. Those membranes are unbelievably comfortable. They come at a price, right?
And what would that be?
Well, you got holes poked in it. So you're back to your calendar approach. Roughly speaking, and this is back to like our suite of technologies here at Outdoor Research, they tend to be a little bit less weather protective in the long run and in sort of like the further distant sides of this. It's not that the jacket's not waterproof, because we hear that all the time. It's absolutely waterproof. But when you start to look at the different ratings of membranes and jackets, waterproof is part of that discussion and breathable. You have to make an end user decision. And I think that's the root of what I want to share with you is through this conversation today of like, how do I pick a waterproof breathable jacket? It does come down to your own needs and your own experience expectations, and that, diametrically opposed. You got to make some decisions sometimes.
Yeah, it sounds like there could, like, some of the trade-offs could be, I think you laid out really well as far as even just laying the groundwork for that conversation around like the dry, cold areas. You're going to be building a much bigger like pressure differential between your microclimate inside the jacket and what's outside. So you're gonna be able to push vapor out a lot easier compared to like a wetter, more humid environment. So you may be wanting something that's maybe a little bit more air permeable in that wetter, more humid environment. Is that?
It's both, and I like to say that in some cases, if you're in Colorado and it's not a very wet climate, air permeable membranes are amazing. They're so comfortable there in those places. But actually the other side of it is true as well. I wear a lot of our air permeable products here in Seattle because I value comfort over long-term durability, waterproofness, especially in like shorter duration activities. And the air permeable membranes here are just massively more comfortable. Again, they come at a bit of a price. If I was 40 miles in the backcountry for 10 straight days with like rain 10 days in the forecast, I probably would choose a different product. Again, so that comes back to our assortment and the amount of jackets we have and helping our customers get into the right product for what they're after, right?
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something sometimes it's good to hear that perspective, because I get down the rabbit hole of I want the most, just the way I operate as a person. I generate a ton of heat. I get sweaty in minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is I think like minus 9.
I was going to say 0-ish. Yeah, something like that.
0-ish, yeah. So I get sweaty at that temperature. And so I want as breathable a product as possible, and getting that air permeability where a little bit of wind just kind of takes the sweat off of me is really nice. But I can definitely see how for some people that little bit of wind, if they run cold, probably isn't gonna be super helpful for them if they're not sweating.
So two things you said there that are really interesting. I'm not trying to go sideways on this at all, but what we didn't talk about, we're talking about waterproof breathables, right? We're talking about staying dry and staying comfortable. You never said anything about staying warm. Because when you talk about trying to stay warm and waterproof breathable, then you add a whole nother level of complexity into this to some extent around, depending upon what you're doing. Think static warmth versus dynamic warmth. If you're moving and generating heat and sweat, your priority is to get the interior sweat out as soon as possible to stay comfortable. That changes the game entirely in terms of the choice that you may make, right? I'm kind of operating under that springtime rain shell kind of conversation. You're entirely correct that in the winter, it goes sideways really fast. The other thing I will say publicly, which is you're air permeable and air moves through the membranes, all that kind of stuff. We're talking about 0.3 to 0.5, 0.1 to 0.5 if you look at the full range, CFM, cubic feet per minute of airflow through that membrane. The human body really can't detect the airflow through a clothing system all the way up to like 5 to 10 CFM. And some people would argue even closer to 15 or 20. I'm not going to get into that argument necessarily because I don't have that strong of an opinion, other than to say, if you wear an air permeable rain jacket with like 0.5 CFM and you say, I feel the wind coming through this, science would suggest, and I align with that science, you really can't feel that. What most people say is, well, it feels cold. I feel cold in my air permeable stuff. Yeah, you probably do, because the human body's perception of comfort has a relative humidity around 60, 65% humidity in some senses. So a little bit of humidity on the inside of your system actually makes you feel a little more comfortable. So if you're moving that humidity out so quickly, it's almost evaporative cooling effect. It actually can make you feel a little bit chilled. It's not the wind coming through your jacket. It's actually, you're doing so good at moving that moisture out.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit more because I definitely,
that's my opinion,
felt like I feel like when I'm sweating and I'm wearing based on some numbers that I've seen, and we'll get into a little bit more. These are numbers that I've just pulled from random places. When there's like around that 1 CFM in materials membranes that I'm wearing, I do kind of feel like the air's coming through, but when it's windy. But I'll have to look into that a little bit more.
Remember, wind hitting moisture escaping, that's a cooling effect, right? There's a convective cooling there that's happening in some senses.
That makes sense. So it could. Okay. I'm going to look into that a little bit more because that's a interesting aspect of the membranes and how they're interacting with all the different things that are happening.
And by the way, again, don't at me. If you're on a windy ridge, 11,000 feet with 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, okay, maybe you can feel a little bit of wind coming through there. I'm talking about general user experiences, on an average.
Yeah, definitely. And I think generally everything, like we're not reading off of like a lecture notes or anything here. So I like some things if there's anything that we misspeak about, I'll try and put in the show notes, but don't be going and basing life and death decisions off of what are being discussed on a podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, so I have a fair amount of expertise in this. And I'd say this is one of the stronger sections of my materials experience. I have a lot of passion for this too. So a lot of this is backed up in years of product testing, bringing, commercializing different products and technology. So I feel like I have a pretty good basis to talk about this, but I completely agree and would say everybody's a little different. That's the ultimate answer to how you should pick a rain jacket. Well, you're different than me, so your choice might be different than mine. And I think that in itself is how you choose rainwear. Don't take one point of data and make big decisions like this on it.
Yeah, exactly. That's great advice. And that was one of the reasons why I was excited to have you on was for that experience and that knowledge. So that's great.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
For sure. And I think something that I've always been curious about with the breathability measurements. So I see different numbers and different testing systems kind of thrown around, and some companies they'll put these numbers out there, and some don't. But I've seen their measurements RET, CFM, and MVT as far as breathability measurements. Is there one that outdoor research uses, and if so or if not, kind of like why is that?
Yeah, good news, bad news. Good news is I'm happy to go through this. Bad news is there's not a one-stop shop answer, right? CFM is a measurement for airflow through the membrane, and the vast majority of waterproof breathable technologies out there are not air permeable. So CFM is really only applicable in those kinds of environments. Now, if you get into wind shells or wind resistant stuff like that, then it becomes slightly more relevant, I guess I would say. So unless you're an air permeable product, CFM's not relevant. Then you come back to the other two you said, and MVTR, moisture vapor transfer rate, is generally the measurement for the rate by which you move moisture through the membrane. So that's kind of the number. RET stands for resistance to evaporative transfer, which is a completely different way of looking at it. And we can get into that. But both of those numbers or metrics and testing systems both have a point of view on how you measure the breathability or the movement of moisture through a system. So they are comparable in the sense that they're trying to measure the same thing. They come at it from different angles.
Okay. And is there one that OR uses, or do you guys test your fabrics off both of those?
Well, unfortunately, we have to use both because certain manufacturers, and I'll just WL Gore-Tex uses the RET measurement system. And a lot of our other partners, for example, our Japanese partners with Pertex, they use the Japanese system, the JIS, which is the more common MVTR measurement. So unfortunately, we prefer the MVTR system in that discussion because it's more sort of logical to the consumer. Bigger numbers are better is a logical thing in the mind. So when you hear 10K, 20K, 30K, you're like, yeah, 30K is better than 10K, right? Well, the RET system is reversed. So if I tell you that, and this is an example, this jacket is 30K breathable, and that jacket has the RET of less than 7. How's that compare, right? That's really challenging. One's bigger, one's smaller, and they're not even the same number of zeros. So we have to use both internally at OR in some cases. But again, if you've been doing this a fair bit of time, you can kind of do that test and say, okay, I think I know roughly where 20K and 7 RET come together a little bit. But then that's where this whole thing swirls back around to say those two products work differently. And that means they have a different user experience that is different depending on how you're trying to use your product. And that's where this gets really muddled and confusing, but in some senses, really interesting because that's the nuance of how we bring our products to market.
Yeah, that's good to know. I think most people are probably familiar with MVTR numbers out there. They're used to seeing 30,000 waterproof, 20,000 breathable, those numbers out there. I think RET I see a little bit with some brands, but generally speaking, I don't see numbers advertised very often. And I think, is that because it's one of those things where, is it just because the number doesn't really mean a lot in the end, or is there another reason for that?
Yeah. I mean, I think of it in a practical sense, but then I like to think of it in our brand's perspective sense. In the practical sense, this is logistics, right? We heart logistics sort of thing. The measurement system for that, we know what the number of a fabric is when we start ideating around the fabric. That's a square of sample yardage made that gets tested in a lab, right? When we move into the production phases, what we ideally do is pull a sample from the bulk production fabric, the fabric we cut and turn into jackets, and we validate that our expectations are in line. So we thought it was a 30K or what, pick your number. And then in the sample and sort of R&D phase, and that's how we kind of build our line and build our product assortments. Then we go make the jackets and we test it again and it's 30K. And we're like, oh, good. Okay, perfect. Sweet. It worked out this time. Rarely does it change. However, how many jackets? I already told you we sell this, hundreds of thousands of these things a year. We can't test every bolt of fabric every 10 yards all the way down the entire production line. So really, truly, when you say it's 30K, you see 10K, 20K, maybe 15 and 30. You don't see, well, this one's actually 16,240 and this one over here is 14,980. Right? It's averages. So in some senses, we have a really, practical sense where we don't want to publish that because it is an average. And you get into the situation where well, you told me that it was 20K and I tested it and it's 18,500. All right, slow down. It's an average, man. Okay, but it's still more than 10, right? So that's one of the other things. Our brand perspective on that number and testing is immediately back to the you need to make the best choice for what you expect, what you need, and what your budget is. And looking at that number is challenging, right? If you Google right now, and I'm big on analogies, I'll throw one in here. If you Google right now what's the fruit or vegetable that has the most benefits to you if you buy organic, right? It's apples. That tends to be one of the number one things. But think about bananas for a minute. You go to the grocery store and you're like, I need some bananas. You got two choices. You want regular or you want organic? But if you go in and say, I got to get some apples today, I'm going to go, okay, organic or regular, I'm going to go organic. Oh my God, then what? You have 12 different kinds of apples. There's different flavors of apples. I need to make a secondary choice. So you don't walk into a car lot and look at the stickers and go, yep, that's the one. No, I mean, you're going to talk to somebody. You're going to test drive it. You might even go back the next day and test drive it again, or go test drive a different version of the same sort of vehicle to make the comparisons. It's like that here, right? You're not buying a disposable piece. Please, I hope you're buying something you're investing in, you're going to wear it for a long time. You're going to need to make an educated choice. So if you just look at that sticker and go 10, 20, I want 20, that's it, you might not be making the right choice. Maybe.
Yeah. And is there a reason why, like, I guess from an MVTR standpoint versus RET, is there a reason why like OR uses MVTR? And if a consumer is looking at those numbers, if they're able to see them, like, I guess first of all, should they care about those numbers then at all?
It's a data point. I think consumers are smart. I think that the younger generation coming up right now are very data literate, and I think that they do lots of homework before they purchase things. That's what all of our guidance and direct to consumer e-com stuff tells us. If like they read reviews, they talk to their friends, they read the media reviews of product, people that we get to test our stuff, and all those points go into their decision making process. So should you care about that statistic if it's available to you? Yeah, it's a data point. It does give you a really interesting indicator. But read the reviews, get educated, talk to the retail staff at a retail store. Back in the good old days, you didn't have this thing called the internet you bought product off of. You went to a store and you talked to a human and they said, I got these two, this one. And you made a choice. You're still making that choice when you buy direct off the internet. But in some cases, all you get is that static paragraph that you read of statistics. What's the secondary thing? You read reviews, you read media reviews and test reviews, et cetera. So sure, you should care about that number, but I think you should also educate on a broader, wider scale too, of like what other choices are out there.
Definitely. And I think there's also the other factors that play into breathability at the same time. And maybe we can jump into that a little bit, as far as, I think from what I've heard, even outside of just what the membrane is, the membrane technology, I think you kind of mentioned a few of them with the Gore technology, Pertex, and Essential, or as one. What other factors are playing into the breathability of a jacket? Because I've heard that can be pretty significant as well.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the major reasons why I say don't look at the breathability statistic and go, that one. There's other factors involved, right? There's three that I should probably talk about today. Number one is how that membrane actually works. At, again, the high level, there's sort of two versions of most membranes, hydrophilic and hydrophobic. Phobic is the fear of something. So that is water not liking, water hating membranes. Hydrophilic is water liking membranes. That essentially means that the hydrophilic membranes absorb moisture. So in that moment of driving your vapor pressure differential up, building up that heat, humidity in some cases, that does start to make the breathability process happen in some kinds of membranes. If it's hydrophobic, that heat staying and moisture is right where it is, or I should say at least the moisture staying where it is until you build up enough pressure and you force moisture through that membrane. If it's hydrophilic, that membrane starts to absorb that moisture and starts to breathe more through diffusion rather than the pores pushing the vapor out. That's where this whole like pressure vapor thing starts to get a little confusing. But at the highest level, hydrophilic membranes sometimes have a higher user comfort because you feel less moisture and clammy against your skin when it starts to breathe. That's a big factor, right?
And out of, just to jump in there quick, out of the three kind of main membrane manufacturers, do all of them have hydrophilic and hydrophobic membranes, or is like OR or Pertex or Gore kind of known more for having one or the other?
Yeah, Gore has one kind of membrane. They have an EPTFE membrane with some other treatments and sort of stuff I probably can't talk about without reviewing if I've signed an NDA recently on some of that stuff. But they have one kind of membrane that they run. People like Pertex have lots of different options. And then, again, getting confusing, but you can have two different kinds of membranes as well of, do you want it to be a coating or do you want it to be a laminate? And I always go to flooring examples here, right? So if you're trying to seal your garage floor in the summer ahead of the winter, you have this big bucket and glug, 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 and you use a squeegee and you put that kind of viscous, syrupy sort of material, and then it kind of dries and it coats your floor. That's a coating. In the textile space, it still goes glug, glug, glug out of a jug and it goes onto a knife machine, like as a squeegee on a roller, and it coats that material and it coats it on the backside of your fabric. Laminate's like laminate flooring. It comes on a roll and you peel it off and you stick it onto your flooring and you roll it with a roller. Fabric, it comes off two different things and they come together and they go through a roller that squeezes them together with heat and pressure, and it starts to adhere with a little bit of glue. Both are valid ways to do it. Both are a little different, right? So in some cases, when you talk about hydrophilic and hydrophobic, you might, in general, be talking about coatings versus laminates as well, right? So that's where this gets really complicated and down and dirty. Most suppliers have more than one option. Gore really only does one in terms of their membrane, but the secret sauce for Gore isn't how they make the end fabrics. They have lots of different processes and glues and different types of textiles and lamination processes, and that does yield some differences in their product in terms of end performance. Get into 2-layer, 2.5-layer, 3-layer fabrics. That's another one of those factors. We can get into it, but like that also has some level of same membrane, different construction techniques. Results vary a little bit.
Okay. So we talked about the hydrophilic, hydrophobic aspect factor. What are some of the other ones for determining breathability?
I love this one. This is the one that it just turns people upside down sometimes because you're like, oh my God, I never even thought of that before. BWR. So you get your new jacket, you walk out in the rain and the water beads up on your jacket and you're like, yeah, look how waterproof this jacket is. Let me tell you what's really going on under the covers there. Sure, that makes you feel like your jacket's waterproof, where you go, man, well, this jacket's not beating water anymore. I'm not really waterproof. The waterproofness of your system, it's in that membrane. The DWR is on that jacket somewhat because beading is always good. You know, it's quick, get it off quick. It's there to keep the face of that composite fabric, and I say composite because that's what it is, dry or drier. Go back to your diffusion of moisture through the systems. If your face fabric, the fabric that's bonded or laminated or glued to the top of your membrane, is saturated, what's the humidity level on the outside of your system? Think small scale, not big scale. The humidity is 100. You can't move moisture through more moisture. So keeping the surface of your jacket dry or drier actually has more to do with the breathability of that system than the waterproofness. And I think that's where people on the sun are like, oh, I never thought of that before. That's what your DWR is more for on the surface of that jacket. That brings me very quickly, though, to number 3. This DWR also helps in most cases, and we're about to go through a 2-year giant change to the entire world in this side. It keeps the face fabric of that garment cleaner, because one of the things that affects breathability and waterproofness to some extent, but more so breathability, is how clean is that jacket? Justin, when's the last time you washed your rain jacket?
Last fall. I wash my gear a lot. But
okay, but last fall, and it's March, right? So depending on your use, and I'm guessing you probably wear your stuff pretty often, you might consider washing. You know, we say care and feeding around here as kind of the joke. You should do care and feeding on your waterproof breathables probably more often than most consumers do, because keeping that jacket clean, and there's a ton of science behind like, oh, keep the pores clean. Okay, but some jackets don't rely on pores. We already talked about that a little bit. Keeping that jacket clean, keeping your face fabric clean, and that DWR working really well optimizes it. That's the word I like to use. It optimizes it, right? So the things that affect your waterproof breathable jacket is that hydrophobic, hydrophilic for breathability, the DWR keeping it so the moisture moves through, but then also cleanliness.
So would you say, as far as the different membrane technologies that we see out there, would having a maintained DWR as well as clean jacket like trump kind of which membrane you're choosing? Like if you all of a sudden have like a DWR, if your DWR is shot and your outer fabric is getting saturated, then it essentially doesn't matter what membrane you have at that point?
Absolutely. But because this world's so complicated and this is such an interconnected system of things that have to work right, I would say yes, but that's where the 10K, 20K, 30K waterproofness in my experience comes into play. I love this analogy as well. I'm like, I don't go to my door here in Seattle and open the door and go, oh, it looks like a 30K day today. It's coming down pretty hard. It's gravity. The rain doesn't hit you any harder, whether it comes down as a mist or it comes down as a pouring rain in some senses. It's still affected by mass and gravity. So in my experience, 10, 20, 30K sometimes actually is a measurement of durability long-term over time, or couldn't, to your exact point, be how long will this jacket maintain its performance before it does start to wet out or start to get overwhelmed by the amount of moisture present. It is easy to eventually overwhelm every jacket. And I think that if you have a dirty face fabric and a dirty DWR that's not working real well and you're wearing a 10K jacket, it might just be more of a speed thing. But even that, to your point, 30K jacket that's known for it, eventually, yeah, that's going to really have a negative effect on your experience that day.
Okay, yeah, just to clarify, like, because I think we're throwing around like the 10K, 30K, like we're talking more about the waterproofness there for a second, as opposed to breathability. Yeah.
Could also be breathability, though. No, it could be. It could be both. Because again, they're diametrically opposed. The more breathable something becomes, the less waterproof it generally becomes. So they are related and interconnected. But in general, yes, your experience is going to get worse if you have a really dirty jacket than if you had a clean jacket, regardless of what kind of product you ultimately had. So when that experience happens, man, my jacket's shot. I got to go get a new jacket. I just need to wash and dry it.
Yeah, fair. And okay, so just based on the numbers I've seen out there, a lot of the time, if they are kind of opposed as far as like breathability and waterproofness not working towards the same end necessarily, I find anecdotally, I usually see numbers like you said, like 10K, 10K, 20K, 20K, 30K, like they seem to always kind of be in line or at least close to each other. Is that is that a marketing thing or what's happening there?
I think so. Again, it's averages, remember? So the actual statistics of your garment might be that it's 12,340 waterproof. And, that particular batch of averages were 14,540 breathable. So instead of saying it's 12K, 14K, which I actually would appreciate me move towards that as an industry because it's a little more genuine perhaps or something. We just make the averages, and it's always like, okay, well, you're 10, 15, and 20. So where do the numbers come in? Where do you want to go with that, et cetera, et cetera? So it's an average, and I think it's just easy to be in parity. It's probably more common to see the breathability scores differ from the waterproof scores. Again, it's really easy to make something 30K waterproof, but to make it 30K, 30K, those are pretty expensive membranes. Those are really specialized and challenging. So as you go up in the 30K waterproofness, more often than not, you're going to only sort of max out in the 15 to 20K breathability numbers. Again, don't at me. There's examples that break that law. But the main method that we use, the JIS method of measuring this, also starts to max out just by how the test methods work at about 30K or 20K, 25K. So in some cases, that's where we see those lab scores start to kind of hamper the actual statistics. No one's ever seen 50K before because the test method doesn't really work that way.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I didn't realize that there eventually you just kind of hit a wall with the testing methodology. And is there any move towards like standardizing, like not using multiple different testing methodologies for breathability out there, or making a new one that maybe work better? Like I know with sleeping pads, they were in 2020, they released a new ASTM standard that the industry came together and said, okay, this is going to be how we test things. It's more consistent, better, easier. Anything like that in the textile world?
There's nothing happening. I would say, and I'm being recorded right now. I would say that I would welcome that. I think that is benefits not only clarity in terms of level setting real comparisons, but the people who benefit from that are the viewers today. It's the ability for us to accurately say, this is our performance, and they state theirs. It's no different than buying a refrigerator and you look at the Energy Star ratings, the miles per gallon or kilometers per hour ratings you get in vehicles and speed and gas mileage, right? Like those are all regulated, and I'm not suggesting we regulate our industry, but you get to a point where it's like, well, that's for consumer clarity. Like I would welcome that. There's not a lot of efforts in that space as well, because some of those makers, I'm not picking on Gore, we like Gore, but Gore is pretty steadfast. Their membranes look best in that RET methodology. They stick by that. They're one of the main people in the textile space that continues to be pretty firm that they're not even willing to discuss different testing methods. So until either regulations happen or demand from other people, they're going to always market their products and what makes their products look best.
It makes sense. And I think it had to be that the sleeping pad initiative had to be pushed from large retailers like REI and Mountain Equipment Co-op. So I think that's probably a large part where some of that push needs to come from a consumer advocacy standpoint, I guess. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I think probably jump into a little bit of a feel free to dance around this question, but in my personal experience, I know we talked about how every like choosing a membrane and an outerwear piece for breathability is really an individual thing, and it depends on where you are, what your use case is. I've personally found from just a pure breathability standpoint and kind of what I perceive as its ability to dump moisture from within my microclimate. Like I've had very good experiences with a scent shell as well as things like Neo Shell and Event, and then less good experiences with maybe some of the less expensive Pertexes, and then Gore-Tex kind of being at the low end of what I find for breathability. In that sense, what was outdoor research trying to solve within the industry with a scent shell by coming out with that product?
Yeah, I'm not going to dance around it because I think I have a great platform to actually answer that question, which is we offer both. Again, we care about making our customers happy and comfortable. We can offer both Gore-Tex and a scent shell. We think of our waterproof breathable assortment kind of in a pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid, is our Ventia technology. And that does not come from one provider or one supplier. We can buy those kinds of products all over the place as long as they hit our brand standards and minimums. And for the record, our minimum is 10K, waterproof and breathable. It's not really a performance jacket meant to be worn in the outdoors if it doesn't at least hit that spec, in our sort of opinion. So that's the base of our pyramid. It kind of comes from lots of different places. We kind of put Pertex in the middle. Again, it's a Venn diagram. There's overlap on this pyramid. Pertex is our value. And in our brand, value is not a dirty word. We care or negative word. We care very much about providing quality value product. We are not commanding the price points that some of our competitors do. And we don't play in the entry price point game as much as others may choose to do. So we see ourselves as a value brand. We love that word. So for us and our partners at Pertex, value all day long, great performance at a great price point. Now they've got some higher end product that we make with them as well. So it's not like we're kind of, pigeonholing them or pressing on what we can do with them. But at the top of that pyramid, and that somewhat aligns in price point order, we have Gore and we have Essential. For us, Gore-Tex, and it aligns with their marketing and branding, guaranteed to keep you dry. It's the durable waterproof option. If it is like a 3 or 4 day trip on the Olympic Peninsula here on the West Coast, and I'm going to be hiking and I'm in the rainforest, it's just going to dump. That's really the right choice in most cases if I'm not moving fast and generating a significant amount of heat. I'll be transparent. I don't like wearing Gore-Tex most of the time either because I also run hot. And I have experiences where I get a little clammy and warm. And I'm like, man, I'm going to get wet today one way or the other, right? So I like to choose other technologies, but I will very candidly say it's March the 23rd right now. There's a Gore-Tex jacket hanging by my door at my house. I own them, I wear them, I like them in certain use cases. But for us, that's that gotta stay dry, right? Hands, a little bit of a different story. We love Gore-Tex and handwear because it's a great product. But in outerwear, the option that we offer our customers are Essential. Essentials are air permeable, super comfortable product. When you look at those two specs side by side, it is very clear. It's the diametrically opposed thing. Gore is about protection and waterproof. Essential is about breathability and comfort, but there's an overlap. I wear a lot of Essential. That's one of my other favorite pieces in our product line because I find it to be so comfortable. So we're excited that we offer both technologies to the consumer. We can educate them about this, about that choice, and say, where are you going? What's the forecast? How much do you want to spend? And we help pick the right product for them, and we can build both. If we weren't a Gore brand, we'd probably be like, well, yeah, Gore's not great. You should buy ours. We're lucky. We have both. We can talk about that.
Definitely. And I think you've hit on it a few times. I just want to highlight it for the listener is that concept of comfort and how maybe that's what we should be focusing on, less on the term breathability, but more on that term comfort. And if you're using a product and you're comfortable, that probably doesn't matter what that breathability number necessarily is or what that membrane is. Like you can over experience correlate what your experience is with what you've used, and then kind of build on that experience. But I really like that concept of using comfort, because that's, if I had to describe something like an experience with a certain membrane out in the field to someone, I would probably be couching it in the concept of comfort. So that's great.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about sleeping pads earlier, go back to sleeping pads, right? You can make something with an extremely high R value, something that's really warm to sleep on, is not very comfortable. You're still not going to have a great night's sleep.
So yeah, that's another great analogy. So I think we've probably provided a lot of information for people out there as far as waterproof breathable fabrics. If someone's shopping for a waterproof breathable jacket, I think they have a lot to go on now, but can you summarize it in like maybe a paragraph, I guess, as to what they should be paying attention to and looking for when they're out there searching?
Well, here's a word I haven't used since the very beginning of our conversation at all, which is probably surprising to most of the people who know me who are going to watch this. I haven't said the word sustainability yet, right? When you think about what's happening in the revolution in our planet around sustainability, and it's only going to speed up and get stronger. So whatever I say today is based on the fact that I'm looking down that pathway. We haven't said, please buy a sustainable product. That's one of the most important things that I would say. You're buying a waterproof breathable jacket that you hopefully have done a ton of research, and you're going to spend a little more money than you might be comfortable because you want to get a really good product. You're going to wear it for a while. You're going to wear it on adventures that you remember and are going to cherish photos of, et cetera, et cetera. You're investing in gear when you buy a waterproof jacket. That's awesome because it's not something you wear once and throw away. So buy one that's sustainable. One of the most interesting things that I share with folks, the carbon footprint of your jacket when it arrives at a retail store and you're presented with the choice of this one or that one, something in the neighborhood of above 90% of the impact of this planet happens when it has already gotten to that point. It's in the materials and the production of that product. It's not necessarily in the reuse, repair, et cetera. I get that that's good for landfills, and circularity is a word that everyone loves to use. I get all those things. But if I look at the carbon footprint, it's the production of it. So when you start looking at waterproof breathable jackets and say, I'm looking for the new rain jacket for the next adventures for the next 5 years, please pick one that's sustainable. It could be a whole host of different things. The podcast is not about sustainability. It's about waterproof breathables. Like even so simple as like, is it recycled? Just look at that. If you do nothing else, try to buy recycled textiles. So I would say, honestly, that comes first to me because that is a passion of mine in my life. Second of all, it's that sort of multi approach of gathering information. Can you find performance specs? Can you read reviews, consumer or media? Can you talk to somebody you know? Go to a store. Go talk to somebody who's like really knowledgeable about this season's collection of product. They're going to give you really good advice, right? So I think that's the second thing is do your homework. Don't just go out and be like, I need a new jacket. This looks great. And then consider where you're going to go, what the conditions that you're going to be in, and what you're going to expect out of this as an overlay over your price point. It's not like I can spend $100. That's all I got. Okay, but what do you expect from your jacket for $100 US? It might differ if you say, I really need to do this in these conditions with these things. I'm going to be 40 miles off the road for like 3 straight days and it's going to be pretty wet. You might need to spend a little more, you know? So I think it's a factor of those 3 pieces for me in general. When you look at that purchasing option, treat it like gear, you know, like tents and backpacks, boots, things that you do a lot of skis, bikes, you know, fill in the blank. You got all these other examples. You put a lot of energy into that, and then people go and buy jackets or clothing or underwear is another one of my favorites, base layers, and they kind of just make a quick choice and say, well, okay, this will work. Put your homework into waterproof breathables. It's an important piece of your comfort in your experience.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I think I'm glad you touched on sustainability because as much as this episode wasn't, I think it's an important topic and something that you remind me I want to bring into every conversation as well, because it is something that's affecting our world and each of us every day. It is becoming not necessarily more of a topic of discussion, but is maybe more top of mind for people these days, hopefully.
Yeah, politics entirely aside, if you spend a significant amount of time in the outdoors or a good chunk of time in the outdoors, it's hard to not see the occasional effect of what's happening to this planet outside. And if you really do love to spend the time outdoors, something you need to start paying attention to in your purchasing habits.
Yeah, exactly. And I do love that outdoor research. That is one of the numbers that you guys give, is the percentage of recycled products in each of the products. So
You're going to see more of that from us real soon. That's a huge amount of work we're working on right now. And I'm really excited that by the time this episode likely airs, there's going to be some really interesting announcements that come out in the end of next month publicly around some of our commitments and some of those same statistics. So hopefully when this comes out, that's out. Please go find that information, because we're thrilled to share some of the stuff we've been working on really hard.
that's cool. Might have to have you back on to talk about some of the sustainability things in the industry, because that's really cool.
I would love to do that if that opportunity presents itself, Justin. I would be happy to come back on and talk about some sustainability stuff.
Perfect. That's awesome. It's been great having you on here. Really, really enjoyed our conversation. Definitely, we definitely got slightly dirty about some of the stuff there. So hopefully everyone at home enjoyed it. I think we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks for having me. A lot of fun. I really appreciate this.